Welcome once again to the Skillful Living program. I'm Pamposh Dhar, and today I want to talk to you about the law of karma. In previous videos, we have of course talked about the path of karma, and those of you who have been following along know that karma means action. So the law of karma literally means the law of action, but more accurately it could be called the law of action and consequence. Every time we take an action, any action, we set in motion one or more consequences, and then the consequences have consequences as well, of course. So we actually always set in motion, in that sense, a whole set of consequences. Sometimes the consequence of an action may be immediately clear to us. Other times it might take weeks or months or years before we can see the consequence, make that link between our original action and the consequence or consequences that followed. And other times we may never see that link at all, but it's still happening. The law is always in force, it's always happening. It is a law of life, a law of nature, if you like. It is not, of course, a human-made law, so not the kind of law that's practiced in courtrooms, which means also that there is no judge, except ourselves perhaps, but there is no external judge sitting in judgment on our actions and meting out punishment or reward. It's important to understand this, that this is a natural law, a law of life. So consequences follow logically and naturally from our actions. So why do people talk about good or bad karma? The good or the bad is our own judgment. That is how I or you may judge an action. So I might think that something you've done was really good, and something that I may have done may be quite bad. But the judgment is our own. It is not somebody else who's sitting in judgment on us. And so it doesn't logically follow that if I do something good, I will then receive a reward in the shape and form I want. So I want to just be very clear about this, that there has to be some connection, some logical flow between action and consequence. So let me give you a very simple example. So for example, if I decide that I want to plant fruit trees so that I and maybe my family, my community can enjoy the shade of these trees and enjoy the fruit from these trees. Now this is a very good action, and if I plant trees, let's say I plant the seeds of apple trees and I nurture the plants, I make sure they get enough sunlight and water and the soil is conducive to the growth of a tree. I take care of the plants. Eventually perhaps I will get a few apple trees, and this will be a very good consequence of my action. However, if I really like pears, I cannot say, look, I did this good deed, I planted trees, I planted apple trees, but now I want pears out of this. That's not going to happen. So that's what I mean by logical consequence. If you plant apple trees, you can only hope to get apple trees. You really cannot hope to get pear trees or orange trees out of those seeds, because the seeds also carry the whole tree in them, in a sense. Yeah. So let's take another example just very quickly. Let's say you find some seeds and you plant them in your vegetable garden. You don't know what they are maybe, but you really want cabbages. But if you have planted the seeds of bitter gourd, or what it's also called bitter melon, I think, you are not going to get cabbages out of it. The only thing you can hope to get is bitter gourd. If you like it, If you know how to cook it so that it's tasty, that's wonderful. You got very good result from your action. If you don't like it, you find it too bitter, well, that's too bad, because logically you can, if you're growing bitter gourd, you can only hope to get that vegetable out of it. So good and bad depends on how you see it. If you like the result, then it's good karma, a good consequence. If you don't like it, then you may wonder why your good action produced a result you don't like. But just remember that the result follows logically from the original action. Let's take a more general example, because this is very specific. You're planting a particular plant, so of course the result will come accordingly. But let's take a more general, more diffused example, if you like. So let's say I'm a person who really likes to help others. So in this past 1 year, I've helped 10 people. So there is a good possibility of a good consequence for me. When I need help and support, it's quite likely that 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 of those people will reach out to help me. If on the other hand, if I have been consistently nasty and mean to everyone I meet, then that possibility diminishes. So when we look at life in these terms of I've been good or I've been bad, then sometimes we do feel like, okay, I did something good, so I'm getting good karma, and that's fine. But again, it's all logic. If I do something to help someone who's later in a position to help me, they will help me. If they're not in that position, or if we've lost touch, then I can't expect some magical reaction from that person. But this brings us actually to another very important aspect, which I think I will leave for another video. This is the concept of detachment. So we do something, we take an action with a certain expectation. How do we deal with a result that we didn't expect and didn't want? This is, of course, what detachment is all about. But for today, I think I will leave it here, and I hope we have a better understanding now of the law of karma. Thank you. Namaste. See you next time.